Here, you see this? It's called a carrot. Now get out there and uncrate them! $2 an hour, and he's a Toronto. He's a king.
Dracula from Sony Image side. Sure, it's just a game.
Welcome, my children of the night, to Cinema Arcade. This is the podcast about movies, video games, and the sparks that fly when those two worlds collide. My name is Steve Guntley, and I'm joined here by my own children of the night. What sweet music they make. Please howl your introductions to us.
Oh, I'm J-Ban.
Ooh, spooky. And who's the creepy skeleton man with you?
Hello, I am Justin.
He's the horse skeleton from the game. Like
So-
that's an iconic horse.
Speaking of sparks, there are literal sparks in the air, so...
There are, yeah. We've got some great ambiance here. We got a big thunderstorm going on outside, so it might get all dark and spooky in here.
If you hear a loud crack and then,
yeah,
you'll know what happened.
that's what it is. But it's appropriate because today we are talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula. I'll level with you. This is one of the episodes that made me really want to do this show. When I was putting this together, because I think this is such an incredible synthesis of this whole idea behind this podcast. This is coming out at the peak era of heavy video game tie-in merchandising, to the point where they don't even really stop to question if this is something that should be a video game. And it's also peak of like marketing things to kids that really are not in any way, shape, or form for kids. And the end results are fascinating and bizarre, and I'm very eager to talk about it.
I believe a couple sets of tits in that movie.
No, there are never sets. Well, there are sets, but usually it's a stray tit.
Yeah,
a stray
that
breast.
That's a good point.
It's one Lucy.
Because
Yeah.
that's what happens when a woman is distressed. It just pops out.
Yeah, actually, speaking of Lucy, like, yeah, she is like
Oh.
half-breasted this entire movie. Like, that's like her whole look. It's like being dressed in brazen red and half a boob exposed. The film we are talking about, of course, is Bram Stoker's Dracula. It was released in November of 1992. This is directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and it stars Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, Keanu Reeves, Anthony Hopkins, Richard E. Grant, Cary Elwes, Billy Campbell, Sadie Frost, and, of course, my man, Tom Waits. Now, there are hundreds of Dracula iterations out there. Hundreds upon hundreds. Like, it's so easy to do. It's so frequent. Like, even by 1992, we were pretty inundated with Dracula. But this is the one that's coming out the gate saying, oh, no, we're not just Dracula. We're Bram Stoker's Dracula. We are accurate to the book for maybe the first time ever. And we have one person here who has read the book. Out of the three of us, one of us has read
I've
this.
read the book multiple times. It's one of my favorite books of all time, and it is not accurate to the book. Dracula does not have a beautiful bride that kills herself.
No.
He's...
How did he turn into a vampire in the book? Is it ever explained? Because like
I don't think it's ever explained. He's just evil.
Because he's kind of just like the alpha vampire. Here he does it by stabbing a crucifix and renouncing God, which, if that worked, I'd be a vampire like a few thousand times over, all
yeah,
right?
for
We all
sure.
have those Saturday nights. No, but I mean, like, it is kind of a wild interpretation, like, for this creation of pure evil. But I appreciate that this movie is coming out, like, trying to add that bit of respectability to it, and then just going so completely operatic and batshit and insane that it's this very strange confluence of a movie. It is a hell of a lot of fun to watch. I think my appreciation for this movie kind of grows every time. Like, I don't think I've ever gotten to a place where I could say I love this movie, but I'm like, I appreciate it a little bit more every time.
I loved this movie as a child.
Okay.
Like, and I do mean as a child.
Yeah. So you were the target audience for this video game.
100. Well, not. I don't know about the video game, but the movie. I just remember watching it over and over again, and just being like, I didn't realize how horny it was. Like when I watched it, I watched it last night, and I was like, what? Oh my! Like what?
Like every character is just ready.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins as Abraham Von Helsing.
Yeah, fresh off an Oscar. Yeah.
Humps Quincy whilst talking for no reason.
Okay, see, I wasn't clear if he was trying to like pick him up and dance around jubilantly, or if he's just like, "Ooh, Rocketeer, let me at him."
That was dry humping.
Yeah,
100%.
That was straight up excited small dog.
Ooh, yeah, it was. Yeah, he's like, "Ooh, yeah, American, got to get at him." But I mean, that's kind of like where we're at with this movie. It's at such an interesting time in the Cineplex too, because I feel like this is the last ebb for a very long time of horny cinema, of horny blockbuster cinema.
Horny
All right,
cinema.
Basic Instinct was a big hit earlier this same year. Like, we're gonna get a few dying strands of the erotic thriller, like your Indecent Proposals and your Disclosures and stuff like that. But this is a horror movie, a big budget blockbuster horror movie that is explicitly sexually charged. Like, it's about like repressed sexual feelings in the Victorian era and things like that. And I really was happy to see it, not in like a pervy way, mostly in just like there's so much hand wringing among like younger generations now about sex scenes in movies, to the point where like we pretty much just don't have them anymore. And I think certain older folks, myself included, are kind of like, I wish movies were like bolder like this. I wish they could be hornier. I wish they could be wilder. I wish they could take bigger, weirder chances.
So you're saying that you spend a lot of time looking at the horny cinema category on IMDb.
So much. I wrote the list. Yeah, no, I put it together.
Now I'm
Somebody
gonna
has
make.
to do it.
Shrek.
Be
Yeah.
the change you want to be in the world.
I loved this movie. I don't think Gary Oldman is attractive in this movie.
I was going to bring this up. Okay, this is a weird era for Gary Oldman where they are kind of shoehorning him into a lot of sex symbol roles. They did this. They did Immortal Beloved, which is a Beethoven movie, but they tried to make him like a sexy bodice-ripping Beethoven. And then they did the disastrous adaptation of The Scarlet Letter with him and Demi Moore.
Oh my god!
Remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
That like completely missed the point of the book, but it was also hinging on the fact that like, you know, ladies are getting all worked up looking at shirtless Gary Oldman, and I'm not like I was having this discussion with my girlfriend when we were watching it. It's like, he's not a bad looking man. No one's like dissing him on that, but that's never been his appeal.
Yeah,
his appeal is his intensity and his weirdness, you know. But asking him to be a romantic lead is a wild choice. Yeah.
You don't find intense weirdness romantic?
I find intense weirdness romantic, but I don't find Gary Oldman attractive in this film.
Fair.
I feel like Keanu Reeves is much cuter, and even like Quincy and Carrie Ewells are much cuter in their like romance with Lucy.
That was my girlfriend Ailish's big take on watching this movie, was that the Cary Elwes and Keanu Reeves roles should have been switched, or like make Keanu Reeves be one of the American characters, because look, this has been litigated to death. I don't want to like kick the poor guy, because he's certainly found himself a place, but this was the year that they were really trying to see if Keanu Reeves had range. And I think they conclusively decided that no, afraid not. Between this and Much Ado About Nothing, I think we've seen that this is a man who cannot really do a British accent, and that shouldn't be a requirement.
So they, like, evidently they cast Keanu Reeves because they wanted like a heartthrob.
Yeah.
And I love Much Ado About Nothing. I love Keanu Reeves in this role, and I don't. As an adult, I now look back and I'm like, maybe his accent's not good, but he's supposed to be this milquetoast dude. Like that's the whole point of Jonathan Harker. He's like he's this cute guy who gets in and way over his head.
But I feel like, for me, Keanu played too modern, first of all, because that's just he's a modern actor. That's just his venue. I think a bigger problem for me, more than the accent work, is that he doesn't seem to react to things. And there's some things happening to him. There are some things that are occurring in Dracula's
I think that's
castle when he
fair.
first
I
shows
think
up.
that's fair.
I think that might just be. I think you just put into words my biggest criticism of Keanu Reeves' acting in almost anything, is that his reactions always feel just a little bit off.
Sure.
And I like Keanu Reeves. I've never seen this movie before. I didn't know anything about who was in it or who wrote it. When
Yeah.
I last minute found it on YouTube because I forgot to watch it and saw, Francis Ford Coppola, and then I was like, it says Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is probably the right movie.
Yeah.
I wasn't like I was watching the rented version. Some dude just uploaded it. And so I checked the quick Google and I'm like, okay, well, Wikipedia says, yeah, he wrote it. Like the first little result Google said.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so this is the right movie so far. And then when Keanu Reeves was there, I was like, I'm gonna check that again because that doesn't seem right. But I don't know.
I want to back up on this too because you're the only one here who has not seen this movie before. What were your expectations going in, and what was your reaction to the final product when you saw it?
So as potentially, I'm kind of like a cusper between the millennials and the Gen Z. Definitely on the millennial side of it, but a lot of the things that Gen Z grew up on is way closer to what I grew up on. And so for me, I think the Van Helsing movie was
Sure.
I was like, okay, maybe something vaguely in that area, although since it's a little older, maybe not as action-y, because that was definitely a turn of the century thing, was everything became a little more action.
I mean, we will get to that movie, but that's from the director of The Mummy, the Brendan Fraser one. So
okay.
It has that style for sure.
And so I was expecting just kind of a maybe slightly cheesy, kind of little campy movie.
Yeah.
And I think it delivered.
Yeah.
The puns. There is a pun about syphilis in this movie.
That was good. Yeah, what did he say? A civilization?
Yeah.
Yeah, we live in a civilization. No, more a civilization. Yeah, yeah. At least that wasn't being delivered to us straight face it. He was giving a presentation and trying to be witty, but
Still a syphilis pun.
Still a syphilis pun. Yeah, not many of those anymore.
Because not a whole lot rhymes with syphilis.
Yeah.
It makes it real difficult.
It is. It's true.
Just like living with syphilis.
I mean, it's weird. We're actually, we're like I said, we're so inundated with Dracula. We're getting 2 more Draculas this year. There's going to be Renfield, which is out now as we're recording this, and then there's The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which
I think looks fantastic.
Looks kind of cool because that's kind of famously the scariest chapter of the book is the sea captain's log, as they're taking Dracula overseas or over to Carfax Abbey, and he wakes up and just feeds on all of them, and it's freaky. That seems like a cool premise for a movie.
And that's the thing about Dracula that I both love and Dracula is fucking with you. He's fucking with Jonathan Harker.
Yeah.
He's like, ooh, I'm just going to be a green light. Ooh, I'm going to be werewolves. Ooh, I'm going to be like that. Ooh, he could just rip his throat out, but he really enjoys, really enjoys just playing with his food.
Yeah, he's like a cat with a mouse.
I'm going to have them pack me into a box and get shipped over to London. And I'm going to leave you here with 3 succubi pretty much.
Yeah.
And have fun, bud.
Yeah, have a good time. Monica Bellucci's in there. Have a good time.
It's half the tit in this movie comes from those interactions, if not more of it. And I was just like, why?
And I wondered, like I said, that's the big source of a lot of the half tits in this movie. It's I wonder if they just think that's the classier choice. Maybe it's trashy to just flash both boobs, but it's classy if you just see one and it's in a diaphanous gown or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's all about having the silk slip a little bit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're wearing right now, Justin.
Yeah.
It looks really good, and I mean, I could see the one, and that's all I need.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No,
but it's the idea for this movie. Well, really. Winona Ryder was kind of the driving force behind this movie. She had been cast in The Godfather 3. She had to drop out for personal reasons, which led to Francis Ford Coppola casting his daughter Sophia in that part, which a lot of people considered to be kind of a disastrous casting choice. So she was worried that Francis Ford Coppola hated her and would never want to work with her again. So she found this script. She found out it was circulating, and she knew that he loved Dracula, and so she brought it to him, and he immediately loved it. He immediately cast her in the part and kind of got to work on the film, which had a $40 million budget. Seems pretty modest by today's standards, but most of that budget went to the costume work, and I really want to highlight the costume work here.
Okay.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. However, the armor that Dracula wears. Sorry, I'm hitting the counter.
No, hit it.
As a historian, as a person who loves costume history, what were they thinking? Like,
it looks rad as hell. Is what
oh,
it looks like.
You think it looks rad? I think it looks like horrible.
It's like striated muscle tissue. It looks like it's completely impractical. But this movie is not going for practicality.
That is not
or
going
realism.
to do a lot for you in battle.
Not a thing, especially because when he moves, it's clearly rubbery. But like all the costumes in this were done by this Japanese artist named Eiko Ishioka, who was like an advertising and theater executive, and this was one of her first movies, and she won the Oscar for this.
Well, I still say she deserved the Oscar, even
100%.
despite the, my personal opinion, disastrous suit of armor.
Oh, so I cannot get on board with that. I love
Mina
that armor.
Harker's costume through this.
Yeah.
And like, even though like it's very impractical that Lucy Westerlo has like a voluminous red corset that she goes like, if she's sleeping, that's her nightgown. That's what she's sleeping in.
She has to be modest when she's in bed.
Yeah, that's what I sleep in. Yeah.
Just in case a gentleman might have to see her in the middle of the night when the building's on fire.
Yeah, it's true.
That's not how that works.
I don't know. Look.
No, I mean, we get like when Lucy goes full vampire like later in the movie, and she's wearing that all white with the like kabuki face makeup.
Yeah.
That looks incredible. Like his daywalker outfit with the old-fashioned sunglasses.
That looks
and the
real.
top hat.
See,
Yeah,
I don't find
dope.
Gary Oldman attractive in this. However, I find him attractive in that outfit.
That's a great outfit. I mean, come on, yeah, it's spectacular. I mean, Eiko Ishioka, if she would kind of work almost exclusively with Tarsem Singh after this. So if you've seen movies like The Cell and The Fall, things like that.
love The Fall.
It's so fucking good.
It's like,
Oh my
it's
God.
such an underrated movie. If you're listening to this,
watch The
go
Fall.
watch The Fall.
It's from 2006. It's got Lee Pace in it. It's like this. It's kind of like a dark Princess Bride, and it's so fucking cool.
It's so good.
And people just completely slept on that movie. I'm still waiting for like the cult to come up around that movie. Ooh boy, you're hearing that spooky ambiance. How you doing, buddy? I got a scared dog on my feet. He's doing okay.
Oh.
Poor buddy. It's all right.
There.
So yeah, like I think, this movie, like when they did some early preview screenings, studio got pretty worried because audiences did not really know what to make of this. It was very big.
don't
It's
blame
very
them.
weird. And it's very horny and it's very gory. But it wound up being like kind of a huge hit. $40 million budget. It made $30 million back in its first weekend, which is crazy. And this got nominated for 4 Oscars. It won 3 of them, including for costume.
What 3 did it win?
It's this. It's makeup, costuming, and sound. I believe
The makeup,
It was also up for
makeup
production
deserves
design.
it.
Let's say all the best parts of the movie, pretty much. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and I mean, this movie does a lot of really cool things. Like Coppola's decision was like that. Whenever Dracula is around, physics aren't quite right. So like his shadow moves independently from him. Water drips up to the ceiling instead of down to the ground. Rats will walk on the ceiling.
I loved the scene where I loved the scene. I thought it was hilarious when Jonathan,
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves' character is shaving and he kind of cuts himself a little bit, and Dracula just kind of appears in the doorway and is like, "Hey, I smell the blood."
Yeah.
But then he starts being all creepy and weird and approaches him, and then Jonathan kind of turns back, looks at the mirror for a second, and kind of you could tell something felt off to him, and then Dracula just kind of kinks his neck and the mirror breaks, and he's like, "Oh, vanity!" Definitely didn't break that, so you
In the
wouldn't
book,
realize I was a vampire.
in the book, he just throws the mirror out the window.
That is way more suspicious, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd be like, all right, dude, weird.
It's like, wait, why don't you want me to see you?
Why don't you want me to shave you, strange man?
Yeah,
Come on.
and then after that, he just starts shaving him. And I'm like, wait, why?
And see-
Why are you letting him?
And this is one of those moments where I'd be like, hey, Keanu, what are you thinking about this? Like, do you have a stronger reaction
It's
to what's happening?
honestly, his face was about as bewildered as my face was watching that part. As I was
Yeah.
just like, what is happening and why is this Dracula guy's real creepy, and not in the spooky sense, just in like the creeper sense of just like, I'm going to get my hands all up over around your shoulders, and I'm going to shave you intimately.
I mean, how do you even achieve that double bun look? Like, I don't even know. Like,
Honestly, I was watching it. I started watching it outside on my lunch, and I was like, what? I couldn't quite make out because of the brightness outside. I'm
sure.
like, is all of it looks like all of his hair is just white.
Yeah.
At what point does head end and does hair begin?
Yeah.
And then later on, I was like, oh, okay, that's where it begins.
It's just, I don't know how he, like, I don't know how you achieve that. I don't know. It's just, it's a signature look at the very least. But, okay, but so I think the choice to kind of shoot this movie through the context of, like, repressed Victorian era sexuality is a smart one. I think that's an interesting milieu, and it's an interesting way to look at it. And I actually think Winona Ryder is quite good in this movie. She is another one kind of like Keanu, who was cast because like she's the hot young thing at the moment. But I think she's actually quite good, and she has a bit of a better grasp on the material. And I think she kind of conveys a lot of that repression. You know, she's always jealous of Lucy, who is kind of like more of a free spirit, and then it kind of opens her up to this temptation. You know.
Yeah, there's like that first scene with the girls, and I was like, oh, okay. They're being kind of awkward about it, but it sounds, reasonable for somebody in their situation. And they're just talking about basically how they're sexually repressed. That's interesting. Didn't expect the rest of the movie to basically be about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strong take, and one that I don't think is super present in the novel. Like,
It's real hard because it's just like Dracula is a monster in the novel, but he's still like, I don't know, there's something like he falls in love with Mina. It's not like this soul mate thing from a past life, which I've always wondered. Like, I've always if you fell in love, your significant other died, and you were alive for a couple hundred years, and you just fell in love with someone else who looked exactly the same. Isn't that just rude? Like,
right. Mix it
I
up.
only liked you for your looks.
Yes.
Forget the rest, honey.
like there's definitely like the Dracula is inherently horny.
Yeah.
Why it's horny? There's vampires have been horny for women, and women loving women and women who love men for a very long time. Before Dracula, there was Carmilla.
Yeah.
And it's just like mouths are sexy. Like, ooh,
Having a mouth on your neck. Yeah, like there's an intimacy to being attacked by a vampire. Yeah.
Look, if you've been alive for a couple hundred years, you just are horny.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
It's probably true.
You ever hear about old people in nursing homes? The older you get, the hornier you get. Well, I guess maybe some people, there's like a dip, and then it comes back up, and you're just like, oh, I'm horny all the time. I don't understand it.
I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't a lot of the subtext kind of thought to be homosexual in nature, because like Bram Stoker was kind of repressed homosexual?
I think it was
not to talk out of school. I just heard that.
Well, I think he's probably pansexual or bisexual. I think the intense longing is there for both sexes in the novel, because the beginning with Jonathan Harker is definitely, he's put in this role that classic Gothic novels women are put into, like the Castle of Udolpho. He is the princess in the castle who can't escape, and so there's this this sexually charged energy of him being in this very feminine role, and him not being of him being trapped by this man who's kind of sexually harassing him.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, he leaves him with 3 women that he's basically, the intent is like, hey, they want you and they want to kill you. I think that was the gist I got. Was like,
Yeah, it's
look,
a delicate balance. Yeah, it's. And I think the design of those 3 like vampire brides is also very evocative of like 70s like European horror cinema that was very strongly like sapphic in nature, you know, Daughters of the Devil and things like that. Like I think it was going to play for a little bit of that. But also this is a 1992 movie. I feel like they're probably resistant to dig into some of those themes.
They have Lucy and Mina make out in the rain.
Yeah.
Like,
was that like a dream? I think
I don't know if it was a dream. Like they're like running in the rain, making out in the rain. Like what was that?
So I think I might know the answer to that one. Who wrote this?
A guy named James Hart.
A guy.
Yeah, there we go. There
a man wrote that.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of the shocking thing to do around that. It's like, oh, did you know that girls can sometimes kiss each other? What? Crazy. What else did James Hart write? He wrote
unheard of in 1992.
Oh, of course, it's from the screenwriter of Muppet Treasure Island. So what else would you expect?
Oh, that was the entirety of.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
no, that was really like all over that movie. Wow, he wrote Contact. He wrote Hook. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so. You know, I find for me this movie loses a lot of steam in the middle, and that tends to happen a lot for me with these very maximalist movies. Like I tend to get the same way with even like Everything Everywhere All at Once is a movie I love. It does like lag a little bit in the middle just because we're going at such a sprint for so long that when they slow down, like the exhaustion kind of settles in. So, like, a lot of the middle chunk is just... Well, there's a lot more Lucy in this movie than I remembered. Like, she's a very, very big part of this movie.
Lucy is a big part of the movie.
Lucy and her 3 suitors are, like, bigger characters than I
Yeah,
would have
they're
thought.
huge characters.
Lucy and, like, 2 of the suitors are really important. The other guy is there.
Oh, yeah, the one
but...
she actually wants to marry is, like, the least impactful to the story. The Texan and Richard E. Grant as the psychiatrist are more... interesting. Also, it seems like the psychiatrist has like an opium addiction or a morphine addiction that they don't really touch on. It's just like
he
just does morphine once and then we never talk about it.
And
again.
I do want to shout out, like we mentioned him already, but I do want to shout out the asylum scenes are incredible because we get Tom Waits as Renfield.
So, in the asylum, the guards to the asylum,
what? That one guy just a box.
Wear boxes on their heads.
Yeah, they wear little cages.
Not the prisoners, the guards.
Was that a thing?
It's just easier that way, I guess. Yeah.
It keeps you from getting bit.
What is going on?
Every time I saw the box on the dude's head, I was like, this is great.
Well, and the fact, like, even Renfield is in this straitjacket that's got, like, 12-foot long arms that just kind of, like, flop everywhere and, like... But I think that's, for me, Tom Waits is the best performance in this movie. Like, I think he nails Renfield. Like, I think it's that's always, like, such a fun character to play or to, like, depict on screen because you just get to be, like, off the wall crazy, like, literally a bug-eating madman. Like, that's always a lot of fun. I think he's, like, a solid actor. He's worked with Coppola several times, and, like, I don't know. It was just cool to see it. And it's a bigger part than I remembered it being, too. I remembered it being like a 1 or 2 scene, but it's a pretty significant part. This all kind of culminates in a big showdown with Dracula back in Transylvania. And, like, also, like, at some point, Jonathan escapes the castle and then makes it back and they get married. And all of this is done very, like, offhandedly.
And it's like, the way it happens is she gets the letter and then she's like, oh, but Lucy's dying. I won't leave her. And Lucy's like, no, fuck me. Go to him. And she's like, oh, okay.
He's
and
a silver fox now.
She writes the letter to Dracula, who she doesn't know is Dracula, and then leaves to go to Romania and is there, like, immediately.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, they had supersonic speed travel back in the 1897.
I thought was hilarious because of the whole boat thing. It's like, okay, this is taking time.
Well, that she could take the train. Dracula has to take a boat.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that's true.
But
Modern technology, take that, Dracula.
But okay, let's talk for a second about the courtship of Mina. Like,
Oh, yeah.
he just, they
It's
take
real
some
creepy.
to this, like, this early Edison-esque, like, picture show,
Which, of
and he
course, Coppola
just
can't help himself.
attacks her.
Well, also-
He just attacks her.
Were you
And
guys
then,
watching the picture show?
They're watching like dirty
It was
movies.
porn.
Yeah, they're watching dirty little silent movies.
There was a topless woman in the movie.
A shocking amount of early film is that.
Yeah.
Like, most of it's lost,
Well, look,
but that's
I mean,
most
that's
of what
how
it was.
technology
a shocking
advances.
amount.
Yeah, or a completely unsurprising large amount.
That's how. Let me tell you about the advances in the internet
Yeah.
and why they came around.
But then they have like there's a horny moment where he's like, "Here, pet this wolf,"
That
and
was
I
so weird.
I admit
Yeah.
I would like to pet a wolf.
Oh,
I
who wouldn't want
admit
to pet a wolf?
I would like I would be a little bit like, maybe you're not so creepy if you let me pet a
No.
wolf. But it was just such an intense wolf petting session.
It basically, for a solid like 15, 20 seconds, it's just the camera constantly moving around while they're like petting this, like almost erotically petting this wolf, and
Oh,
their
not
hands
almost.
touch and their hands go over each other here and there. And this is after she was literally shitting her pants running away from him.
Yes,
And then
yes.
the wolf comes and she's just like, "Oh no." And then the wolf is friendly and she's like, "Oh, maybe you don't suck. I will pet this wolf." And I'm like,
I do
what
suck.
the hell was this scene?
Also, all my impressions of Gary Oldman are apparently the Count from Sesame Street. So there we go.
I picked up on that one earlier when you said part two.
Yeah, I mean, and then we get the later, like, supposed to be the sexiest scene in the movie, which always just kind of grosses me out.
Oh,
Just
that
him
scene.
cutting his chest open and they're licking each other. It's just like, all right, guys, let's
what
calm
the
down.
hell?
Let's calm down.
I was like, okay, this is getting spicy. And then he quickly moves his hand, and I'm like, oh, he just cut. Oh, this is way less spicy now.
Yeah, now it's just kind of icky, you know.
She's licking his blood off of his chest.
But it does. The movie ends up doing the thing that like all Dracula movies do, at least the ones that are trying to be faithful to the novel, which is there's a showdown with Dracula that feels so anticlimactic because he's pretty easy to kill ultimately. They try and drag it out and make it more like Mina's moment of retribution rather than like if you take the Bela Lugosi version where it's just somebody goes, boom, got him. You know, like this one goes into a little bit more.
Like what they did. Yeah, they literally, Lucy was just like, go lay down pretty much. And then they just kill her.
Yeah.
I was like, they just killed a vampire. That took no effort.
And in this one, the killing blow gets to be done by the cowboy, like super important character, the Rocketeer. Like what?
Yeehaw.
Yeehaw, indeed. And then
Yippee-ki-yay.
then there is a very Mina gets to cut his head off later, which is a really good prosthetic actually.
Yeah.
Like, that looked really.
Can I just
convincing.
point out, you said something earlier when we were playing the game, and I said, I have something I have a discussion I want to have about that.
Oh, yeah, please.
Because you said something about, it felt so weird having Jonathan, what's his name, as the hero.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like he was the hero. I felt like Van Helsing was the hero.
Oh, I meant of the game. Yeah.
Oh,
no,
of the
yeah,
game.
Yeah.
Okay,
Van
yeah,
Helsing
yeah.
is definitely the hero of the movie.
Van Helsing,
And
100%.
Van Helsing- This is so I love Anthony Hopkins. I think this is the weirdest acting choices that I've ever seen from Anthony
bizarre.
Hopkins in this role. You talk about Keanu Reeves, you talk about Winona Ryder. Personally, I think the most poorly acted role in this is Abraham Van Helsing.
Also,
See,
can I just throw one little tidbit in? I think other than the suitors of Lucy, I think everybody else pretty much makes out with Mina.
Yeah, I think so. Just about.
Van Helsing makes out with Mina at one point.
Van Helsing is
in a
quite,
really weird, creepy scene.
He's quite
but-
creepy with her. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, he's just so consistently bizarre and creepy.
See, that's the thing. I'm not going to put this in like my top 5 Hopkins performances, but I do appreciate that he's making these choices, and I like that he is making Van Helsing weird and crazy because, let's be honest, that's what he should be. He's been delving into the occult for like 50 years. Like, he's going to be a little weird. Like, you have to be a little weird to pursue
He's
it.
so fatherly in the book. He's so sweet. Like, one of my favorite lines from the book is, like, he talks to Mina, he's like, there are darknesses in the world and there are lights, and you, madame, are a light, to paraphrase that quote. And, like, he takes care of Mina. He doesn't make out with Mina.
I think he says that in the movie.
He does, and then he does that weird like dance with her.
But yes,
he's being very handsy with her.
He says that in the movie, and it does not have as much of a fatherly tone. It
Yeah,
has
I mean,
more of like a deranged scientist tone.
That's the thing. I wasn't reading that as an overtly sexual move. Like maybe it was. I think the decision they made there was to have it be kind of like an attempt at paternal, but he's kind of too weird for it to really land that way.
Yeah.
Well, I do wonder, like, whether or not they've decided to make Van Helsing like weird, because otherwise he would take over the movie, because he's the hero. He is sort of the hero. Like, I mean,
he
along
comes
with
in like
Quincy,
a full hour into the movie.
yeah, like he knows what's going on. He is very cagey in the book because he doesn't want to tell anyone that they're vampires. But I mean, because like honestly, anyone would be reluctant to tell, like, hey, sorry, vampires.
Sorry about that.
Am I right?
Mondays.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like we spend the whole like first half of the movie in like mystery, and like we kind of understand what's going on. It's like, oh, it's a vampire doing vampire things,
and that
and
is
then
kind
like
of that's kind of the edge this movie has, is that like we are already so familiar with the story that we don't need to worry about it necessarily too much.
And then Anthony Hopkins comes in and literally just explains everything to everyone. Because nobody could make a connection. Nobody, the guy's like, I don't understand. We've put 2 men's worth of blood into her, but she's still low on blood. All she has are these 2 pricks in her neck. It's like, my dude.
Yeah. What?
Wild.
And that's kind of the downside of that strategy, is that like, all right, the audience is ahead of a lot of this. So like, it's no fun watching characters in a movie like try and figure out something that you already know. You know, that gets a little tedious.
I think it's fine. I don't know.
I didn't think it was bad, but I think that it was just like all of this is happening, and then Anthony Hopkins just rolls in and is like, yep, that, give me a steak. Yeah. Guns don't do anything. And he basically, once he gets introduced, it shifts away from like a... maybe not quite like an atmospheric horror movie or anything like that, but it just immediately switches to, all right, now we're going to pretty much just go to action, because now we're doing things. Yeah. Because the guy who knows everything showed up, and now he's put everything in motion to go do it.
Well, I feel like this is like one of the weaknesses of the movie compared to the book, is like they're so terrified of Mina dying. That's really their impetus to kill the Count. Yeah. Is because Mina is going to die. And instead of Mina, like Winona Ryder, Mina fading away, she just gets stronger and stronger, and somehow she gets power over snowstorms. So like, I just feel like it undercuts the drama of the novel by making Winona Ryder not die, like, or not get near death.
Yeah. She kind of went... It was more that she was just drifting towards corruption.
It's like she was becoming a lich to a degree. And that... It was such a weird thing, because I think at one point Anthony Hopkins, Van Helsing, says the effect of like, as the power of 40 men, and then it takes 3 men to kill him. Yeah. It's like his power... Both of them, their powers are literally nothing unless it feels like it should be something right now. And then it's like, I can transform into animals. I can control all these things. I can do all of this. And then like, you know, half an hour later in the movie, it's just like feeble vampire. And you're like, what?
Yeah. What was the, him being able to walk around in the daylight? Was that a thing in the book, or was that?
I don't remember him walking around in the daylight. I think, like, at least initially, like, when Jonathan was in the castle, he was sleeping during the daytime. I don't remember whether or not that changes as the book progresses.
Yeah. I was just curious. I think it was more a decision to kind of have him be normal looking for a little bit and give him a cool ass top hat. But.
You're telling me that in the book he doesn't go to London and start courting a woman just brazenly out in the street while really creepily staring her down?
I don't believe so. It's been a while. I need to
Okay.
reread it.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of the weirdest part of just how he shows up and just starts being creepy to her, and she's like, all right,
Yeah.
cool.
Well, and if you're macking on someone, don't kill their best friend.
Right. Yeah.
Bizarre
yeah.
choice.
That's dating tip number one. Like that's the first thing that they teach you. Yeah. Yeah. In dating school, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't
'cause,
know if
like-
they teach you that.
So there are a lot of weird things about this movie, but there are a lot of weird things to love about this
yeah.
movie. Like I love the atmospheric train in front of the novel or the diary of Jonathan Harker, like the weird like kaleidoscopic situations, like the setting, like it's just like all the things people get wrong with like maybe the writing or the like it just feels like it fades away because it's so atmospheric.
It really is. Like there is something cool to look at in every frame of this movie, and I think that's why it has kind of endured despite some of the casting missteps or the writing missteps.
Yeah.
Like because it is just so wild and dynamic. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like I feel like this is what the new Elvis movie was going for and failed to do. Like by being so hyperactively shot and edited and put together. Like for this one, I feel like it's meant to evoke a sense of madness. For Elvis, it just was like obnoxious and confusing.
I just had a hit in my head. I saw Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer in the last 6 months, and that honestly felt similar to this movie to a degree. I think that movie did a lot of it way worse.
Yeah, probably.
But
Yeah,
I think
imagine.
that like to a degree, kind of the pacing and like the way the action is like interwoven. But yeah, I think the cinematography is pretty consistently like. I wouldn't say anything of it that they do cinematography wise is super remarkable, but the sets. They always find ways to have the sets at good angles.
How nice is it to see like physical sets? Like it's nothing's been green screened here. There's like they're using matte paintings. Like it's still old enough that they're doing that technique. And sometimes you'll see like miniatures or like little automated figures. Like it just looks really tactile and cool. And I think that's why people keep coming back to it. You know, it is a flawed movie. It's messy and it's big and it's weird and it takes a lot of chances, but.
And even though the romance is weird, the romance is still there.
It's
like,
there,
and
yeah.
it's a very problem. Like for me
Yeah.
personally, I've always had an issue with Dracula because Dracula is supposed to be evil. He's supposed to be a monster. He's not supposed to be like. I have a real issue with like and like I like the fact that he has teeth and that he is a monster because so many modern vampires and modern Draculas have. They basically have no teeth, you know.
Yeah.
Their teeth is just foreplay, you know. They're not actual monsters.
Well, you think about it as like Nosferatu versus original 1931 Dracula. It's like I think most Dracula movies are responding to the Bela Lugosi version, who was more suave, who was more sexy, who was more... Nosferatu is just like a rat man, you know? Like, nobody's getting seduced by that guy. He is a monster who is hunting you to your death. But the Count Dracula is a charmer, and I think that movie was such a hit and so, like, iconic that every movie sort of needs to respond to that, and it sort of reclaimed the character in a very interesting way.
That's the weird thing to me, right? Because the first part of the movie, when it's Jonathan and Dracula at the castle, at Dracula's castle, it's Keanu Reeves with a creepy old man, and then after Keanu Reeves basically gets trapped there, Dracula leaves and goes to London because he saw the picture of his past wife, and then goes to London and then becomes this charming man. And it's like, so he,
Like
where was any of this before?
I mean, I think
He's clearly living a double life.
I think they don't really go into it, but I think he regains his youthful appearance by feeding on people. That's why, like, he was all old and desiccated, and he got to be like young and handsome. But
It
like,
doesn't
also
explain the senile creepiness.
does not explain the senile creepiness, and does not really explain like where his social abilities came from, because I feel like if you're alone in a castle in Romania for 100 years, you're probably going to be a little squicky. You probably don't know how to talk to people.
No, you hit the clubs.
Yeah, I mean, I was
You have
weird
to
after
ask
just like 2
permission to
years of
enter the
COVID.
clubs, but
You too. Will you
hit
let
the
me
clubs.
in?
That's what bouncers are for. They're the best thing for vampires.
Oh, man. Well, I want to segue into the game here. Do we have anything else to say about the movie?
Say it.
It's wild and wonderful. It's so good.
I'll say this is the last successful film that Francis Ford Coppola ever directed.
Well, and it's actually so many of his films were not financial successes.
They were not.
But
No,
this
he had
was
a pretty rough
huge
80s.
financial success. It made what, like over 200 million?
Worldwide, yeah, absolutely. And like, you know, and he actually feels very energized in this movie in a way that he didn't really throughout the, like, he's never been like a super bombastic filmmaker, you know, if you look at The Godfather or Apocalypse Now or things like that. He's got some touches of style, obviously, but he's never been quite to this level. I kind of think of like the modern equivalent would be Martin Scorsese doing Wolf of Wall Street, or George Miller coming out of retirement and doing Mad Max Fury Road, like these really huge stylistic epics from directors that you didn't think had it in him anymore. I think it's a cool thing. It's kind of it's a bummer he was never able to really ride that train and continue to make interesting work.
And I had honestly...
He's making a new movie, so...
Yeah, he sold his winery to pay for it. He's paying for the entire thing himself.
In the last couple of months, I think it was Apocalypse Now. I was like, who directed that? I don't remember. And then like I got into the whole Wikipedia of Francis Ford Coppola's backstory, and I was just like, this movie's pretty much when his career just kind of disappeared.
I mean, that's a topic for a whole other day. But yeah, watch the documentary Hearts of Darkness, which is about the making of Apocalypse Now. Basically, yeah, everyone agrees, including Francis Ford Coppola, that movie broke him. So I think he's struggled ever since. He's never quite been the same. But let's segue into this game, because this is just one of those completely wild artifacts that I don't think should exist, but it's pretty crazy. I mean, this is kind of the peak era of video game tie-ins. Basically, like if you had a movie, it was released by a major studio, and if it was expected to be marginally successful, you needed to have a video game. And so this one did prove to be a bigger hit than they thought. And some marketing genius decided that, like, oh, this hard R, very horny, very gory adaptation of an 1897 epistolary novel, the kids love that shit. Like, let's line them up. So there was a line of action figures. Like, who was playing with those in 1992?
What was the action on the figures?
They didn't really have any action. That's the thing. They were kind of just like
you were supposed to make
figurines.
up your own action.
Basically, yeah.
I think maybe if you're a little gothy, you would have really appreciated one. Maybe you would have wanted one.
Dracula hangs out with Barbie here and there.
Yeah.
Did you have one?
No, I was a little too young to get one.
Yeah.
But I didn't have my own. Like I was a wee tiny baby when this came out. But my parents had no parental like locks or controls, or anything like that. Like.
Definitely not the world I lived in.
I would have been like 8 or 9 or something like that when this movie came out, and like so I was aware that it existed, but like I was not clamoring to play with the action figures of, oh mom, get me the Gary Oldman. Like no, like I wasn't clamoring for it. It wasn't really in the zeitgeist as far as kids were going. But there was a comic book series. There was a junior novelization, which always cracks me up. It's the novelization of a movie that's trying to be really close to the original novel. So it's just like, give me the original novel, I guess. But kids wouldn't read that. And then there were video games. Now there's a couple different editions of this game, and some of them we didn't play, but I wanted to talk about them briefly. Firstly, the Game Boy version. There's a Game Boy version of this game that, I am not exaggerating, is just Mario. It is Jonathan Harker, and there are question mark blocks that power-ups come out of. You're roaming around through Dracula's dungeon, and you are bopping little question mark blocks that are straight from Mario and getting power-ups like stakes and whips and stuff like that. So that thing is nuts. Then there's the Sega CD version. Now, how familiar are you two with the Sega CD?
We had one at my middle school library,
In
which
the
is
library?
weird because if you start looking at years, it doesn't line up.
No, yeah, I was gonna say that thing would have been defunct by at least a decade by the time you were that
This
old.
might have been. I had to go to 2 different grade schools because as I was going into 3rd grade, the school district shifted so that half the schools did K through 2, and the other half the schools did 3 through 5.
Okay.
Because they put all the farm kids at one half, and they put all the non-farm kids at the other half of the district. And then they're like, cool, now we don't have to have all the buses go everywhere.
There we go.
And so I think this was at my 2nd grade school in the library. And so this would have been 2006.
Okay.
I think 2004 was when I was hitting 3rd grade.
Yeah, the Sega CD
math
was
is
dead
hard.
by
I would have been
1995.
7.
Yeah.
I would have been 8.
Yeah.
No, and I was born in 95. And that's the crazy part is we just had one. We had the Zelda game. We had a Jeopardy.
Yeah.
We didn't have this game though.
That's okay. So the stock and trade for the Sega CD was one of the first like CD-ROM based consoles. So they could do video, very small postage stamp size, very grainy video, but you could do it. And so this game used a lot of actual cutscenes from the movie, and then the gameplay itself was kind of like it was kind of like a rotating cylinder that the world was mapped around, so when you're walking it kind of looks like the whole thing is rotating around you. And the main character, you're still playing Jonathan Harker, but it's now a live actor that's been digitized to be a digital character. So it's like Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
so like you have a very stiff looking character who just walks around punching bats. Like I think that's your only enemy in that game is just bats. That thing's notoriously bad. And then we have the versions that we played today. So the versions that we played were available on both the Super NES and the Genesis. These are action side-scrolling platformers, like pretty much every game that came out during this time. And here's one of the first baffling decisions they make. Your main character is Jonathan Harker. So on paper, this makes sense. It's Keanu Reeves. He's a young, cute boy. You're playing the youngest, strongest, most heroic-looking character in the movie. But think about what Jonathan Harker actually does in this film. He takes paperwork to a castle. He gets seduced for a long time. He comes back with PTSD. He doesn't really do much.
He
after
takes
that. He gets
paperwork
married.
to a castle and gets trapped there for 3 months.
Yeah, we kind of forget he's in the movie until he's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm back. I jumped out of
Romania.
the castle."
That's a pretty good impression.
Thank you.
I did the thing that Dracula's wife did. That got weirdly Australian. And I jumped off into the river.
Good day, mate.
Good
Yes.
day. And then I wrote to my
Good
soon-to-be
night.
wife to come here and marry me in Romania instead of taking me home so we can be married with people we know.
That
Well,
is his
you
arc.
can't. No, he can't. She can't take him home. They can't travel together unless they're married.
Oh, that's right. And he needs to make some more money before he can make an
Well,
honest
I
woman
mean,
out of her.
they can both go back to London.
They could.
They don't have to be sitting next to each other on the
No,
train.
it would be unacceptable
But
at that time period for
they
her.
could have possibly gone back to London.
No, that would have been unacceptable.
Especially
It would've-
because it's hinted they're kind of middle class too. Like,
Yeah.
It's only allowed if there's at least 1 week between each one traveling.
Yeah, they had all these weird like proprietary rules, but like all of which is to say is this does not make for the most dynamic and engaging
And then-
video game hero.
The person who does the majority of the action, Van Helsing, in the movie, in the game is just a person in some of the levels that when you walk up to them, he just thinks about a weapon in the area, and then that's it.
Then you have to find it.
And there's
Yeah.
no words. He doesn't point. The game doesn't tell you where it is.
But I think these old Romanian villages are apparently teeming with cavemen and bats. Like this is a very offensive portrayal
And
of the Romani people.
A lot of fucking spikes that come
Oh,
out of the
boy.
ceiling and the ground.
Yeah, I would argue the main enemy in this game is
Spikes.
these spikes. The
The-
very poorly placed obnoxious
So
spikes.
most games, when you have spike traps like this, it's like 6 spikes in a line. One comes from the bottom, one comes from the top, one comes from the bottom. Usually in games, they will do it in just a predetermined pattern, so that like if you wait until the right moment or you use the right cadence, you
Yeah.
can get through without getting hurt. But this one, the spikes only activate when you get close enough to them, and that is literally like 1 pixel before you're getting hurt by the spike in front of it. So it's so annoyingly difficult to time them correctly to not get
It
absolutely
sounds
eviscerated.
like it frustrated you,
It did.
Justin.
Yeah.
I don't think I was the only one frustrated.
I
I
loved the spikes. They tickled.
diced by it as well. I don't think you were getting as frustrated.
Julianne.
but it was definitely-
This is going to be, unfortunately, a bit of a recurring arc on this show is that J-Ban doesn't like games with a lot of jumping. And I keep making her play a lot of games with a lot of jumping.
This one did not have too much jumping.
This one has a reasonable amount of jumping, but they balance it out with combat that is largely ineffective. Because you have a little blade that you start with, and you kind of like swing it around, hitting dogs and bats and stuff. You can get a sword, but it's very unclear how to do this. Because like you said, you find Van Helsing, he thinks about a sword, and then you have to backtrack in the level to find the sword you just thought about.
It's literally like
Vampires.
the dots and then the thought box and then a sword, and you're just like, bro, what?
What? Yeah.
Vampires
Nowhere.
make for excellent video games.
Absolutely.
How does this compare to Castlevania?
The same way that like a garbage you find on the street compares to like a finely prepared meal. It is delicious, which you can say.
Castlevania actually got it took some of the plot from this movie, from Bram Stoker's Dracula. The backstory with Dracula being upset about a dead wife.
Yeah.
They actually took that from Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
From this movie.
And it's more effective in the Castlevania. Even like Castlevania notoriously has some pretty like goofy dialogue and some bad voice acting, but it's also like it's more effective there. Like you could feel the drama of it a little bit more, and it's partially because the environments you're exploring are exciting and the combat is tight and interesting and like ever expanding.
Unlike in this game. In Castlevania, I've seen Castlevania be played a few times. Not quite my cup of tea, but you know, there are things like you can dodge and duck, and boss fights are actually interesting.
Yeah.
In this game, boss fights were literally just walk up, crouch, and stab them and hope it doesn't kill you first.
It's
and then
kind
at
of
one
it.
point, I was fighting like a dragon thing, literally had no idea how to do damage to
Yeah,
it.
there was no visible hitbox on that dragon.
And like it could, if it made contact with me, it hurt me. But if I did anything to it, nothing happened. I threw explosives at it, and nothing happened.
that is some of the most useless dynamite I've seen in a game.
That is some
The
useless dynamite.
So to put this into perspective, in most games that you might be envisioning like this, you have a traditional, 16:9 widescreen view.
Yeah.
In this one, it's old school 4:3, so it's
Sure.
the boxy. So you can't see super far in front of you. And when you throw the dynamite, it's gone. It's out of your sight almost immediately. And then you're just like, well, what did that just do? And the answer is almost always nothing.
Not a damn thing. It's similar to the guns in this. Now, the guns that you can find they're period accurate. So, like, just like in 1897, when you fire a rifle, 5 bullets come out at the same time very slowly and just kind of bounce in random directions.
Is it like a blunderbuss?
Unless
I
I'm completely
guess.
wrong, the Lee Enfield rifle was out by that time, and it's one of the most accurate rifles that ever existed.
I mean, the Colt 45 was out, or like the Colt.
What time
not
was
the
this taking
45.
place in?
1897.
Yeah.
1897.
Like, they have
I
movies
feel like
in this
the Enfield
movie.
was more in the 20s, the 1920s.
No, Enfield was definitely around during World War One, wasn't it? Okay,
that was the-
are we gonna
that was
Google?
vague.
Are we gonna?
When was World War One? That was
World War One-
1915,
1911 to 1918.
There we go, history.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, either way, the gun is not the most accurate weapon that you want to be using, but neither is really anything else you're carrying. So like, and this is one of those games where enemies respawn like the moment you step out of a frame. So like, if you have to backtrack for any reason, be prepared to fight everyone
Okay.
again.
1895. So not
There
far.
we go.
They should. I don't think.
History
I don't think
buff.
it was the first bolt-action rifle, though.
Yeah.
So they should have had
They should have had something.
something.
But like either way, the gun that they give you is just kind of laughably inept. Like it just goes off in like all these weird directions. It doesn't have any kind of verisimilitude. And so like it's also very inconsistent with the platforming. Like it's not clear what you can jump on, and it doesn't really make sense what you can. Like sometimes there'll be like a lamp in the background. You can't step on that. But if there's a same-sized bucket hanging from a wall, you can absolutely step on that bucket.
I cannot tell whether or not you have given me Stockholm syndrome because I didn't mind this game.
Really? Oh my god.
Like
This is a twist.
I didn't like it. I just didn't mind it. I was like, it was much better than Wayne's World, much
Yes.
better than E.T.
Sure.
Yes.
It had more gameplay than Gotcha.
Honestly, I'll say it was probably better than all but like one game we've played so far.
I mean, I would.
I don't
Here's-
think that's saying a lot because
Yeah.
there's still a solid gap between number one and
Here's
here.
My
But-
possibly hot take is that I think Wayne's World is better than this.
How?
I think it's a better made
Just
game.
because of your swing?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the swing made me laugh.
We made it through like 4 levels in this game, as
Yeah.
opposed to
The one, but
we didn't even make it through that level. How far?
Yeah, that was a
What
long
is a
ass
level? Yeah.
I think the barn was designed by the same people who did the music story in Wayne's World. Though, like, because you're walking around these
The
inns and
infinite
taverns.
barn.
Yeah, they're just like gigantic. But I mean, there's something kind of broken about this game. Like we came across like an enemy that's like this creeping ivy, and there's like a hard line on the back of it. I'm like, what is going on with that? And it's because this is supposed to be in a corner with its back against the left wall, but they put it in the right corner,
And
so
didn't
like
mirror it.
They didn't mirror it. Like, so it feels kind of sloppy. And then, like you said, with all these spikes, they did not time these out in a way that you can get through without taking damage. And I feel like that's a number one, like, sin of bad game design.
Yeah,
It's like,
I think that's
you
fair.
should be able to beat the entire game without taking damage.
And
Like, it might be
here's-
hard, it might take skill, but you should be able to.
Here's the little additional tidbit is that the invincibility frame is like as long as the invincibility frame in like Smash.
Yeah.
Smash Brothers. So that means it's really, really small.
Yes.
So if you get hit by one of these spikes, chances are pretty high you're going to take at least 2 hits from one spike.
I think
so
the
if you
best
try
you-
to just run through the spikes, you make it to the second to last spike and you're dead.
I think the best you ever did, and you were the one primarily tackling the spikes, but the best you ever did was like losing 3 of your health bar.
Out of 5.
Out of 5. Like, that was the best you could do. And
And
like,
that was with effort.
that was like really trying, and that's on the
That's
lower difficulty.
still- yeah.
Oh yeah, this is also one of those weird games where like the difficulty, it doesn't really change how hard the game is. It just changes how much you're going to see of it. So like you got to fight the dragon guy because you were playing it on normal difficulty, but when we played it on easy, it's like it skips that section entirely.
There's trainer because it's not even easy.
Oh, it's trainer mode. That's right. Yeah.
I was the only one who did it on a real difficulty.
Oh, you're the only normal one amongst
Yeah,
us.
and let me
Yeah.
tell you, I did not get very far.
No.
The only, like, the first time we played it, J-Ben was playing it, and there was zero idea where the sword was. And then I found the sword, and I say found in pretty extreme air quotes, because it was just there.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything to find it. And that was immediately immensely easier right after getting that sword. I felt bad that J-Ben had to deal with that stupid dagger for as long as she did.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
She
Because to
finished
be clear,
the boss.
the game does not give you like I'm harping on the Van Helsing thing again, but the game does not give you any indication that he is conjuring that weapon into existence. The game has like an arrow at the top of the screen that's like navigating you towards the exit,
Well,
which
first-
admittedly would have been welcome in Wayne's World.
First, it navigates you.
But yeah,
It navigates you to him, and
Yeah.
then after you get to him, it navigates you to the exit.
but you would
and
think
that's
it would
it.
like navigate you from him to the weapon he just gave you to the exit, but it doesn't. Like,
Look, it's because he's not giving us the weapon.
Oh, that's right.
He's
He's just-
dreaming.
he's like, wouldn't it be nice to have a sword? Yeah, so it's
If
very
this
kind of poorly
whole house that
explained.
you're in the attic of this house, and this whole house is full of bad guys, bats, and drunk people throwing beers.
Oh yeah, that's the other guy.
Why are you here?
Giant
If you're
drunk
not
men.
gonna
Just
help.
giant drunks. Yeah, in Romania, all the drunks are gigantic.
Yeah,
Like that. Yeah, it's a guy who's like laying on the ground. And it's like a cartoon.
like the
with,
size of Big Show.
It's like he sees Superman. And he's like, "Well,
Andre
I'm
the
never drinking
Giant.
again." He throws his bottle. Like that's basically what he's doing. And to reward him for quitting drinking, you stab him in the back of the head. Yeah,
Or
I mean,
the front of the head, depending.
or the front of the head. Yeah, I mean, the bosses in this game are all just like large versions of figures in the movie. So the first boss we fight is the coachman.
Oh, is that who that was?
Yeah, he's like supposed to. He's got like this big whip and this like death mask, and that's the guy who takes you to Dracula's castle. The second boss is just the 3 brides, and then the third boss is gigantic Tom Waits as Renfield. So first of
Wait,
all,
that's what I was fighting the 3 brides?
you were
Yeah.
fighting the 3
What?
brides. Yeah.
I know,
Also,
I'm-
Is some like Hydra bullshit?
Again, just misinterpreting this game that like Renfield is not really the threat in this. He never leaves the asylum in this movie. He's just like a poor guy who went insane. Like, and he's not a giant 12-foot monster. Like, and you know, they're even using the stylistic elements of his long straitjacket. Like, he's swinging the arms of that straitjacket to attack you. And it's just so, like...
Oh, no! Sleeves! My worst enemy!
Oh, no,
I
man.
will leave! I'll turn around! I cannot defeat Sleeves! Wait a minute, you're telling me there's torches around here? Oh, interesting.
I'm gonna hit
What
you with
about
my
this
jacket.
dynamite that I have? Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I don't know how to use it.
The dynamite is basically just a super ball. Like, it doesn't do anything. It's just going to bounce around. Yeah, no, it's... I just think this movie is so conceptually... confused, and like just the idea that you know, this was the era. I don't think video games are for kids, but this is the era when they were being marketed pretty much solely to children. There's a pretty hilarious commercial advertising this game about like it's like a kid in a sandwich shop or something, like who decides to stake his boss because he played Bram Stoker's Dracula the game. Really bizarre,
You know,
very 90s.
Really, these
Yeah.
commercials did not help the general stigma around violent video games.
Not so much. I mean, yeah. So it's just wild to me that that's how this game was marketed. That somebody had the idea that, oh yeah, this thing is like hyperkinetic and colorful. And this was also kind of a trend at this time of like turning hard R-rated properties into kids' entertainment. Like there were Saturday morning TV shows of Rambo, RoboCop, and The Toxic Avenger. Like, there are animated cartoon versions of all of those, which is just nuts. And I feel like this is kind of in that misguided vein. Blood. So I find this game a fascinating artifact, and I wish it was more fun to play. But, like, it's kind of like a barely functional action platformer for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, like, I think pretty much rated E.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I mean, this is
it's
before ESRB days.
Yeah,
but,
it's bloodless. Yeah,
there's no blood. There's no nipples. There's none of that.
not even one.
Not even one. It's so
I was expecting
disappointing.
one of the bosses to just be one tastefully
Oh.
exposed breast. Like,
Maybe
no, not so much.
They saved that for the Sega CD version.
That must be in there,
So they
yeah.
could use the real nipples.
That must be it. See, I knew I should have bought a Sega CD.
With like what 16 32-bit color back in those days.
Yep.
Even though it was, you know, lifted from a movie, it still looked like it was lifted from an Atari almost.
Sega CD is one of those consoles that's just kind of locked in time because the consoles didn't really work that well when they were new, and time has only been degrading those systems. So like a lot of those games are kind of impossible to play
I
anymore.
wonder what they go for on eBay.
So much. I think one of the most expensive games in the world is called KO Flying Squadron. That's for the Sega CD. I think the last I saw it was like $5,000.
Oh,
something crazy
wow.
like that. Yeah.
I'm gonna
KEIO.
I'm gonna eBay how
Oh.
much the console costs.
Yeah. That might be. Yeah, I'm curious about that too. But yeah, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the video game, very bizarre, fittingly bizarre almost for the film property attached to it, but maybe not in the right direction. Should we move on to our rankings? Are we feeling confident on this?
I think I am. I think
It's
I
like
am.
Sega CDs are surprisingly only around $200.
Oh, okay.
Well, which is surprising, and I think it may just be a testament to the fact that nobody considers it to be vintage because nobody considered it to be good.
It's not a very there are one or two games on that system that are incredible, and then a lot of like full motion video point and click adventure crap. Like it's a lot of really bad games.
It's like it's the reason why nobody's clamoring for a Ford Pinto.
Yeah, exactly.
alright, you
exactly.
know.
Give me that Yugo.
Yes.
All right, so let's move on to our rankings here. Is this a good movie, good game? The highest you can possibly reach. Is it a bad movie, bad game? The lowest you can possibly reach, or is it one of the mix of the other two? Let's start with J-Ban because I feel like I'm bracing myself for a hot take.
Oh.
Okay. This movie is amazing.
Okay.
Okay.
World class. Top notch. Yeah, it's weird, but life is weird and you want some weird shit.
Hell yeah.
And this movie delivers. It's so wild and I love it so much. And it was funny rewatching it because like a lot of the love is from nostalgia, but a lot of the love is it's just so bold. It's such bold choices.
Yes.
And I think the game, even with my Stockholm syndrome, I'm going to say bad game.
Oh, okay. Whew. All right, I was worried. No, yeah. To be clear, you are free to have any opinion you want on this. Like if this game worked for you, it totally worked for you. That's amazing. But Justin, how about yourself?
I mean, good movie, but I feel if there was like a meh game category, I think that's where this game would land.
Okay.
And I think I would have to put it in the category of bad game, just because I don't think it's a bad game necessarily, but I don't think it deserves good game category. It deserves a game that was made category.
Sure.
It's like, this is unremarkable in every way, shape, or form. If you bought this for Christmas, you'd probably be sad, but you'd probably be like, at least I got to play it. At least it wasn't, E.T.
All right, so you're ranking good movie, existent game.
I'm really surprised you thought it was a good movie, just from the way you were talking about it.
I mean, I thought it was a fun movie, and that to me, I think, is more important. I think there's a lot of weird, wild, creepy stuff going on.
Yeah.
But I think overall, it wasn't. It had room to be a better movie, but I don't think it necessarily dropped the ball too harshly. The characters at least seemed like they were characters, even if they were fucking weird ones in some cases.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I'm there too. I'm going good movie, bad game. Yeah, I mean, this just like we said, just because this movie is flawed doesn't mean it can't also be pretty great. Yes.
Oh, I'm going to wait till you're finished because I have something to say.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, and I think a movie can be deeply flawed and have some big problems and still be worth your time, and I think this is definitely worth your time. It's a very singular movie. It's very epic. It's very unusual, and I love that it went there, and I love that it tried some crazy things. And the game is not good, but it's funny to me that it exists. I think it's crazy that this game exists. I think it's a really interesting time capsule, and I think it sort of represents all of the weird ass reasons that I'm fascinated by game movie adaptations as a topic.
So now that we've sort of wrapped up, I have to give a shout out, and I have to heartily recommend people either read the book or get the Audible recording. They have a full cast recording with Tim Curry and Alan Cumming.
Oh my God.
And it's an unbelievable listen.
What?
It's so good.
Who does Tim Curry play?
Van Helsing.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's
Perfect.
great.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
I mean, I feel like he could also probably do Dracula, and it would be fine.
But you never hear, well, it's an epistolary novel, but you never get a letter from Dracula. You never get Dracula's point of view.
No.
So
He's the threat.
he's the monster at the end of the book.
He's Grover? What? Oh my God. Why didn't I see it before? All right, well, on that note, next week we're going to be mixing up the list a little bit. I feel like I've been kind of dictating the schedule so far, so I want to hand over the reins to my co-hosts here. And next week we're going to do a J-Band's choice. What are we going to play next week?
We're going to play Vertigo.
That's right. There is a video game of Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, generally considered one of the greatest movies ever made. I don't know how you're going to pull that game off. It's like a recent game too. I don't really know anything about it. I'm excited to dig into it and see what we can see. One could say I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with looking into it, with learning everything I can about it, and with pretending it's a game that I already like.
I know literally nothing about this.
Have you never seen Vertigo?
No.
This is going to be
I
a
am pretty
treat
sure.
for you.
I've seen Psycho, and I think that's the only Hitchcock movie
Okay.
I've seen.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited for you.
There's a lot of Hitchcock movies. So.
There's a lot, yeah. But this is
There's a lot of movies I didn't see growing up with a very strict parental controls on the media I was allowed to access.
There's nothing parentally controlled about Vertigo.
No.
You could have
Well,
gone to your local
Okay.
library.
58, you're fine. Yeah. But either way, I'm excited for you to take that. This is going to be a big moment of like film education for you and film history. Like this is a very important movie.
Yeah.
And maybe a game that's better. Who knows?
Ooh.
I'm going to assume it's better.
Suspenseful.
Yeah.
Better than this.
Better.
Now, when
yeah.
did the game come out?
That came out just like 2 years ago, I think.
Okay.
It's actually pretty rare that we're going to be playing games from like the modern console generation because they stopped making these video game tie-ins. So I'm very interested to see.
Yeah.
So be sure to tune in next week for that. We'll find out just what the hell is going on with Vertigo the game. So we will see you next time, everybody. Bye-bye. Eek, 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 on the back.